It's I have no idea if this is on a private channel or not. So if you're out there, hi.
Yeah.
I I'm Kelly. I am one of the co-hosts of Two Broads Talking Politics. Usually we're just an audio podcast, but we're going to experiment with video since this is the night before the election. So I've got on with me here Bryan Harnsberger, who is a clinical psychiatrist. Do I have that right?
Psychologist. Yeah. I don't pursue.
Psychologist.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Coping skills.
All right. And so Bryan and I are just going to chat a little bit. Mostly, I think about self-care, some things to think about. We have not all been doing the best self-care. I'm speaking for everyone now. I'm speaking for all of you out there. You have not been very good at self-care lately. So we're going to talk some about that. And, just it's the night before the election. Everything's a little crazy. So I thought maybe an episode about self-care, I should not have a glass of wine in my hand. Otherwise, I would have.
Well, one's definitely self-care.
Okay.
You're good there.
All right. So, Bryan, maybe just start real quick by telling us a little bit about, your background, your specialties.
Sure. So I went to William James College. I got my doctorate in psychology there. I have a PsyD. So I specialize in clinical psychology. In terms of my background, I do a great deal of work with college students. I also work with other populations, do a lot with mood disorder, anxiety disorder, and a lot of complex life situations. So more or less, what I try to do is help people navigate when they're having a hard time getting through certain tough parts of their life.
Do you think, and of course, we don't want you to comment on patients, but do you think that this moment in American history is difficult for people? I mean, I know for me, just speaking for me personally, it's been hard. I luckily, a bit of self-disclosure, I started Lexapro for the first time in my life 1 week before the 2016 election, which turned out to be especially good timing. So I've actually gotten through it a little better than I would have. But I feel like there's just so much coming at us all the time, and that a lot of people I know are having difficulty coping.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look at the grand scheme of things, a person needs a world in order to be a person. So when that world doesn't feel right, especially like what it did after 2016 election and how it's been kind of unfolding as we've been going on for the past 2 years, it's been really difficult for people to feel like this is the way things are supposed to be. They're not sure how to act. They become a little bit more socially isolative. They're not ready to accept this as the standard norm of living. So I think for many people globally, there's been a great deal of anxiety coming in since 2016. I remember when I was at Suffolk, we had our whole team kind of debriefed and was talking about how frustrated and how bewildered we are and how we were going to go about talking with clients about the election. And it was a very, very difficult time clinically. Speaking from myself and a number of the people from the team, they just really had a hard time thinking objectively that day. That was a tough day.
I'm not sure I'm able to think objectively yet. Maybe I'll get there.
Yeah.
So the other thing I know for sure, and this is absolutely true, I've talked to a lot of people in my life that over the past 2 years, and really especially the past 6 months, as we've sort of thrown ourselves into political activism, we have not been eating very well. We've not been sleeping very well. I know a lot of people, including me, absolutely, who've been drinking more alcohol than we'd like to, not to the point where it's interfering with our lives, but probably more than is healthy. So I guess I have sort of multi-pronged question. One is, how we get through just the next 24, 36, 48 hours, just sort of in the short term, how we take care of ourselves. And then I think the sort of question beyond that is, how do we get back into the right kind of routines or whatever is right for the individual person? How do we get back to a new normal?
Right. So the first part of your question, working on the short term, I think this is a policy that everyone kind of adopts during crisis, and it's kind of a all hands on deck. So what you're really trying to do is you're moving those goalposts really close, and you're trying to figure out what you can control, what you can't control. Cognitively, we only have a certain amount of bandwidth. So instead of hopping into all the cognitive distortions that we're doing, adopting kind of a defense attorney to rebut all of our negative thinking, it might just be better to kind of work on accepting what we can control, the things that we do that day, whether that be working out hard in the morning, giving our best to crush it at work, to vote, to get out word about getting everyone to the polls, and the things that we can control personally. Because outside of that, that's what we have to do in terms of when we're in crisis. Just make sure that we're going to be safe. We're going to grip it. All hands on deck. And for the second part of your question, how are we going to get back in a routine? So I'm glad that you said the word routine, because when I think of self-care, we always leave out the next word, which is management. Mm-hmm. So just like a person needs steady insulin injections if you have diabetes, folks need to be on a steady regimen of activities that are going to bring satisfaction to their life. So that can be a whole number of things. When I mean satisfaction, I mean, what makes our world feel right? What do we do for the sake of doing that just feels right? What is intrinsic to us? For me, it's helping others. So any opportunity that I get to help other people, I'm going to grasp onto it. That's what makes my world make sense. For other people, it could be just enjoying music, to having something tactile, maybe engaging in artistic activities, anything that's a form of expression, maybe doing a podcast marathon, anything really that you do for the sake of just doing. In terms of getting into a steady regime, the first thing you want to do is set up, I would say, a sleep schedule. Always waking up at the same time, always going to bed at the same time. That's really going to bookend, your day. And in between that, what you really need to do is assess how ready are you to make certain changes of your life. Some people aren't going to be ready to hop into a daily gym activity. Some people might say no to eating veggies, even though their cholesterol is through the roof. So we need to do an honest self-assessment of what we are actually capable of changing at the moment. And then after that, just making sure that we play. Play's one of the most important components of our life outside of work and love. So finding time to do that every single day is going to be imperative in terms of taking the time that you need to care for yourself.
So I know one of my problems when I try to start a diet routine or exercise routine or whatever it is I tend to be very all or nothing about things. So I'll say, I'm only going to eat 1,200 calories a day. And then if there's a day where I'm tempted by something, there's a lunch meeting at work and I have to eat something that's on that list. And, those are my only choices. Then I just give up completely and just go, well, I guess the diet's just blown. I can't do anything anymore. Or if I have one day where I can't work out, I just get totally thrown off. What are your recommendations for sort of avoiding that sort of thing?
Man, that's really hard. It's how do you jump back on the wagon after you fall off? And it's hard because, those moments hurt. The first thing that you need to do that I believe is to not be such a drill instructor. Don't show a little bit of compassion for yourself. We're meant to screw up. Humans are not infallible creatures, and then I think the best thing that you can do is get back to learning what that first step was, how you were able to take that, and kind of retracing your steps. If you did it once, you can do it again. Just because you fell over doesn't mean you're completely incompetent. It just means you're a person. Um, the some of the things that you really want to look at, if I'm going to put on my therapist hat and talk about clinical topics, it's called relapse prevention. So how are we going to prevent those opportunities for us to stumble? In that situation, you want to really focus on two things. Your SUDs, which are seemingly unimportant decisions. That might be, yeah, I'll just skip the gym. I'm really tired. I'll do it tomorrow. Or, you know what, like, I did just have a salad for the past 4 days. Having like a Big Mac or a fillet of fish will be okay right now. Those kind of really, really tricky words that don't seem like a big deal, but they actually are. A lot of times I try to tell people, that are in a depressive state or in a depressive kind of position, they often talk about how fatigued they are and how tired they are and how they'll just do it tomorrow. Maybe trying to replace the word, I'm feeling tired with I'm feeling depressed. And maybe that will change the way that you look at that circumstance. If you understand that, if I'm saying I'm depressed, I'm going to go sit on the couch, you might have more reason then to not sit on the couch and to do something else. And then I think one of the next kind of things that you want to look at from a relapse prevention perspective outside the SUDS is your AVE, which is your abstinence violation effect. That's when you fall off the horse and you're like, well, F it. Like, I messed up, so I might as well just keep it going. So for that one person that has one drink, in terms of people with an alcohol dependence issue, they'll just go out and get hammered. Mm-hmm. So for a person, if you're eating salads all day and you're being super good about your health, and then one day you just slip up and you buy everything off the value menu, like, big deal, it happens. You got to build in those kind of days. Realize that relapses happen. It's a natural form of the cycle of addiction. So we're humans. We're going to mess up. Just be nice.
All right. And I'd like to remind everybody for tomorrow to drink water and eat food. I realized at some point today, I was like, I didn't take my Lexapro this morning. I've barely had anything except coffee to drink, and I ate Cheetos for breakfast. I should probably eat something. So that's not such a good way to go through your day, especially a day like tomorrow when a lot of us are going to be up really late watching election returns, probably drinking wine. Make sure you eat some food, drink some water during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're going to get Cheetos, make sure they're the crunchy and not the soft ones.
My husband, unfortunately, learned that he could crumble up Cheetos and put them on macaroni and cheese.
Oh my gosh.
This is not a super healthy meal, if you're wondering. Our 4-year-old will eat it, which is, a very good benefit, but not such a healthy meal.
That's prison cuisine. They used to do that on the ramen. They would break up Cheetos and put it on their ramen, and that would be something really special. I know that. I just know.
Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that we talk about? I'm sure we could have you back on, after the election, maybe around the holidays time, to remind people how to have good habits. But what else would you like to talk about tonight?
I think one of the things that I would like to kind of convey to everyone is that you're going to have a ton of thoughts running through your head tomorrow. A lot of them could be fearful, depending on how the election swings. Hopefully not, but I'm a worry well, so I always think about the worst case scenario. If you start to kind of encounter yourself having a great deal of anxious thoughts, one of the things for you to really focus on is that thoughts inherently aren't dangerous. That no matter what kind of scary thought it comes along your mind, it's not going to do physical harm to yourself. So make sure that you give yourself an opportunity to feel your feelings, but don't let them have the full arena for the entire day. So if you do find yourself feeling overwhelmed, acknowledge that. Understand that, this is going to be a hard day. I knew it was going to be a hard day. I knew it was going to be a hard day 2 years ago. So acknowledge that you have the feeling, and then try to do an activity for you to kind of relax yourself. Whether that be find yourself a nice weighted blanket, to slow down your breathing. Try to breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 7, exhale for 7 or for 8. Do that kind of a cadence. Maybe work on a grounding technique. There's a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique that I love. So you take a minute, take a few deep breaths, look around the room, look for 5 things. Name those things out loud. Now I want you to listen to 4 things. Try to hear 4 distinct things. And then you're going to feel 3 things, smell 2 things, hopefully pleasant, and taste 1 thing. And then just rinse and repeat. And if you got to keep playing that record in your head, make sure that you're just giving yourself positive affirmations, and don't change that. Just keep going over and over and over again until you find yourself in a better place. That's what I would suggest.
All right. That's great advice. And I'm going to focus on trying to stay calm and centered tomorrow, and drink my water, eat something other than Cheetos, maybe.
Yeah,
And
just be kind to yourself, and have, like, tomorrow is tomorrow, and as long as you do your part, just try to remember that the world isn't going to end. You might
hopefully.
you might really feel like it, and you might convince yourself of it, but don't. We've been in tough places before, and tomorrow might be a beginning of something really, really special. And if not, maybe the next day will be. So don't give up hope.
All right. Well, thank you, Bryan. This has been really great and really helpful. And hopefully everyone will just keep watching this anytime they need a little recentering tomorrow. Bryan and I will both be on Twitter a lot, I'm sure, tomorrow with election results. And, if you guys need any help figuring out how to vote, we've got a whole team of people who are ready to help out with things. If you learn about any voter suppression things going on, make sure you tag one of us on Twitter, and we'll get it to the right people to help amplify the message. So thank you very much to Bryan.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I'm sure we'll be thrilled to have you back on at a later date when we can talk a little bit longer. And to everybody else, enjoy Election Day. Try to find the fun in it.
Yeah.
And hopefully after Election Day, things won't seem so bleak anymore. All right. So this has been our first test video podcast. If you're watching, make sure you also tune in on election night at 8 p.m. Central. And I'll be with my co-host, Sophie. We'll be recording in the same place at the same time for the first time since we started this podcast over a year ago. So that will be extremely exciting. And we'll be analyzing, watching results, looking for candidates like Sharice Davids, making sure that we know how they're doing in the polls, and it'll be a blast. So thanks, Bryan.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.